Zuckerberg'in Karanlık Sırları mı? Yasaklı Anı her şeyi ortaya koyuyor. Meta'nın üst düzey liderleri hakkında Wynn Williams'ın anısından gelen patlayıcı iddialara dalın.
All right, so we've got this story blowing up.
Yeah.
And it feels like something straight out of, one of those Silicon Valley shows.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
A new memoir,
Yeah.
Careless People, subtitle, A Story of Where I Used to Work,
Right.
by Wynn Williams. And she was a director at Facebook, or I guess we should say Meta now.
Right. Meta now, yeah.
This thing is not just making headlines, it is sparking legal battles.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been going through all the coverage on this. BBC, New York Post, CNBC. There's even a blog post floating around.
Wow.
And it is clear this book has thrown a grenade into things.
Oh, yeah.
And your job on this deep dive is to understand, really, what is at the core of Wynn Williams' claims.
Okay.
How is Meta hitting back? And what does this tell us about how these big, massive tech companies actually work? And the people at the top of them.
Okay, so let's jump into some of the claims themselves. I mean, this book is making some pretty serious accusations, right?
It is, yeah.
And it starts with Sheryl Sandberg. What are some of the things that stood out to you as the most, I don't know, significant or surprising allegations against her in these reports, and why?
Well, the thing that really sticks out here is this contrast between the very public persona Sandberg cultivated and then the alleged private behavior. We're reading reports about a lingerie purchase, something like $13,000 allegedly for herself and like a junior staff member.
Oh, wow.
And then there's this anecdote about Wynn Williams being invited to share a bed on a corporate jet.
Really?
I mean, these details, whether true or not, they immediately catch your attention.
Oh, for sure.
And they paint a picture that maybe some people would say clashes with that whole lean image, right?
Yeah.
And I think it brings up this question of, the pressure on leaders, especially women in these very visible positions,
Right.
to maintain a certain image. And does that always reflect, what's really going on?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it makes you think about, the kind of performative aspect of leadership.
Yeah.
Especially in an industry like big tech, which is under so much scrutiny.
Yeah.
Now, the memoir also gets into Wynn Williams' perception of Sandberg's professional style, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And according to the reports, Wynn Williams saw that lean-in message as more of a shtick, almost suggesting that Sandberg was more interested in compliance than actual empowerment.
Really?
Yeah, and one of our sources actually picked up on this too. They mentioned how Sandberg's persona sometimes felt a bit forced. And this just adds to that question we were talking about, authenticity and leadership,
Yeah.
And that potential disconnect between what's being said publicly and what the internal culture is actually like.
Right. It's one thing to, talk about leaning in, but it's another thing to, allegedly foster an environment where obedience is what you really value.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, now shifting gears to Mark Zuckerberg, the founder himself.
Right.
The accusations against him seem, I don't know, even heavier, I guess, right? Touching on these really critical areas of Facebook's or Meta's operations.
Yeah.
What are some of the key claims there that really stood out to you?
So the allegations around Zuckerberg are big, they're significant because they go beyond just personal conduct and get into the ethical and global responsibilities of a company like Meta.
Okay.
And that claim that he was sucking up to China by looking into censoring content to get into the Chinese market is huge.
Right.
Now, Meta has said that they were interested in operating in China and they considered different ways to do it.
Okay.
But they say they never actually did implement any censorship. But this raises a really important point, right?
Yeah.
About the tension global tech companies face. Balancing access to these markets with their supposed values like freedom of expression.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a problem we see them wrestling with all the time.
All the time. Absolutely. And it really is, it's a tightrope walk, right?
Yeah.
Trying to navigate all these different political landscapes and cultures, and at the same time trying to, I guess, uphold or at least appear to uphold, certain principles.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
What other serious allegations are being made against Zuckerberg in this memoir?
Well, there's the accusation that he lied to Congress. But, the reports we've got don't go into detail.
Right.
So that one's kind of hanging out there.
Yeah.
But there's a more serious one that the book accuses Zuckerberg of not doing enough to deal with hate speech on the platform. And this hate speech, allegedly, contributed to the genocide against the Rohingya in Myanmar.
Wow.
That is a very serious charge.
Oh, yeah.
And it really gets at the huge power these platforms have and the ethical responsibilities that come with that power. Then you've got this claim about Zuckerberg bad-mouthing Sandberg to Stephen Miller, no less, criticizing Facebook's culture as too feminine and inclusive. And if true, that could be seen as, a pretty troubling view on diversity and inclusion from someone at the top.
Yeah, wow.
Finally, there's mention of some awkward encounters with world leaders. But again, there are no specifics.
Right.
So hard to say what that even means.
Right, okay. So those are some really heavy accusations, especially the ones about the company's global impact and its ethical responsibilities. It really makes you stop and think about, just how much power these companies have and the responsibility that comes with that power. Now, Joel Kaplan, who's a current policy chief at Meta, is also in the book. What kind of allegations are being made against him?
So with Kaplan, it's more focused on his behavior towards Wynn Williams.
Okay.
She says he was inappropriate, like pressing up against her on a dance floor and making comments about her appearance and her husband that were unwelcome.
Oh, wow.
And she even claims he was emailing her constantly when she was recovering from a serious complication after childbirth.
No way.
Yeah, demanding she participate in work stuff. But we do have to keep in mind the reports say that Meta did an internal investigation into all this.
Okay.
And they cleared Kaplan of any wrongdoing.
Right, so we have Wynn Williams' account, but also the result of Meta's internal investigation. And, of course, this all leads up to Meta's very strong reaction to the whole memoir. What has their response been, and what legal action have they taken?
Yeah, well, Meta has come out swinging.
Okay.
They're calling the book false and defamatory. They say it's just a bunch of out-of-date and previously reported claims with some false accusations thrown in. And they didn't waste any time going to court.
Right.
They got an emergency ruling from an arbitrator to temporarily stop Wynn Williams from promoting or distributing the book.
Wow.
They argued she broke her severance agreement, which had a non-disparagement clause in it. And this really shows you the kind of power imbalance between ex-employees and these big corporations when sensitive information gets out.
Right. And the arbitrator sided with Meta, at least for now. That's a pretty big deal.
It is. The arbitrator said Meta's likely to win its case.
Okay.
And that they'd suffer immediate and irreparable loss if they didn't get that temporary order. So now Wynn Williams can't badmouth Meta, and she has to try to stop the book from being published or distributed further. I mean, this shows you how seriously Meta is taking these allegations and how far they're willing to go to control what people are saying.
Right. So not only are they saying the claims are false, they're actively trying to keep people from even seeing the book. What else are they saying about Wynn Williams and, I guess, her motives?
Well, they claim she deliberately kept the book a secret and didn't go through the usual fact-checking processes.
Really?
Yeah, and they're saying she was fired for poor performance and toxic behavior, and that she got paid by anti-Facebook activists to write the book.
Wow, okay.
Now, it's interesting. Sarah Feinberg, another former Meta employee, came out publicly to defend Joel Kaplan.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She said she only ever saw him act professionally. So you can see Meta is really pulling out all the stops to discredit Wynn Williams and her story.
It's really, I mean, it's a classic he said, she said situation, isn't it?
It really is.
Two totally different stories. And Meta's doing everything it can to make people doubt Wynn Williams. Now, what about the publisher, Macmillan?
Right.
I mean, they're kind of caught in the middle of all this. What's their take on the situation?
Macmillan is standing by their author and the book.
Okay.
They said publicly that they're appalled by Meta's actions, and they're committed to upholding freedom of speech and Wynn Williams' right to tell her story. They've been very clear that the arbitrator's order only applies to Wynn Williams, not to them.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep supporting and promoting the book. They say it went through thorough editing and vetting. And they also pointed out that Wynn Williams had a whole schedule of media appearances lined up, which have obviously been disrupted by this legal action. So you've got this clash between a powerful corporation trying to control information and a publisher defending the right to free expression.
This whole thing, the allegations, Meta's fierce response, the publishers standing their ground, it really shines a light on some very fundamental issues, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's more than just a behind-the-scenes drama. This memoir is being framed as a morality tale for our times, making us think about how a company like Facebook has changed and whether what it promised in the beginning matches up with the impact it's having now. And it forces us to look at those possible gaps between the carefully crafted public images of these tech leaders and their alleged private actions. What does it mean when someone who was there, who saw it all firsthand, decides to come out and criticize a company so publicly?
And the legal battle itself, it highlights that really tricky balance between non-disparagement agreements, which are so common when people leave companies, and the public's right to hear these inside stories.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about companies that have such a huge impact on society.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how far those NDAs should go when it comes to stuff that could be a matter of public interest.
Exactly. And when you look at the specific allegations, like the stuff about China and the Rohingya genocide, those aren't just internal company matters.
Right.
We're talking about global issues. They raise really important questions about the ethical responsibilities of these social media platforms all over the world. It's not just about a few people. It's about the power and influence these companies have on everyone.
This deep dive into the Careless People memoir and all the controversy around it has been, I don't know, a really insightful look at the complex dynamics inside a major tech company.
It has.
The conflicting accounts, the legal fight, it all shows just how hard it is to get at the truth and to hold these powerful players accountable in this digital age.
It's incredibly challenging.
So as you're listening to all this and thinking about it, what do these allegations and Meta's really aggressive reaction to them tell you about the culture inside these big tech companies?
Yeah.
What are their priorities? What does it mean when someone who worked there decides to share such a critical perspective? And how do these powerful companies try to protect their image when they're faced with information that could be damaging? It's definitely a lot to unpack, and there's plenty to think about long after we finish this deep dive.
Absolutely. Food for thought, for sure.